Alright, let's do a quick roll call to see which one of our labbies are missing. That's Erica.
Here.
Preston. Here. Cornwall.
Here.
Joel. Here. Courtney.
Here.
Claire. Claire. Thank you. Gabrielle, was she here? Okay. Jackie.
Oh yeah, that's an old list.
Jack. Aaron. Here. Aaron Lamb, sorry. Dorian.
Here.
Kit. Here. Ava.
Here.
Ava Barber Smith, sorry, there are three of you. Cheryl.
Here.
Kind of showed up. Ava Barish.
Here.
Ava Kaysen.
Here.
Wanho. Here. Mel.
Here.
Preston. Preston? Of course, Preston. Preston. Thank you. I was going to say Preston. Theo.
Here.
Anna Herndon. Anna Herndon, sorry. Anna. There you are. Aaron Gill. Here. Yenny. Jay. McKenna. Here. Kaya. Here. Rhea.
Here.
With a Y.
Here.
Everett. Here. Rhea without a Y. Aparna.
Here.
Taj.
Here.
Noel. Here. Tiffany.
Here.
Awesome.
Is that all of the labs?
Those are our two labs.
Okay.
You want me to call out yours?
No, I got it.
All right.
All right. Sorry, it's loading.
I don't know.
What does someone else call out their lab while mine is Wait, I got it. Okay. Joanna, Carla, Dan,
Here.
Jesse, Jordan with the A, Sophia, Hermosa,
Here.
Nicholas,
Here.
Praval,
Here.
Elizabeth, Brandon,
Here.
Alejandro,
Here.
Lily, Gabe,
Here.
Jordan with a Y, Nashville. All right. So which lab did you not call?
When and Nick, you want me to call it?
I have it right here.
Got it.
I can do it real quick. Grace, Shahitha, Isaac, Anna, Dean, Ann, Laura, Dash, Tate, Anna Kim, Michael, Ronit, Maki, Lewis, Praneet, Callie. Perfect.
Did we call the three-week? Brett, did we call the 3 weeks? Becca, do you want to do that? What?
Got it. Becca's on it.
Okay.
Everyone's here.
Do you want to start? Aren't you moderating?
My moderator.
I thought you
Okay. Hey everyone, good morning. We are super organized and super
That's what I was
excited.
informed of.
In somewhat. Oh, I thought you took that.
Oh, no, I'm just blowing.
Are we
I mean,
recording?
I can if you don't want to. Oh, no.
Yes, you're being recorded.
Thank you, moderator.
You just like kind of explain your argument.
Great, awesome. So we are really excited to have our demo debate in previous years. We've done this later on, and we got lots of feedback that y'all wanted to see it early. So today we're having a demo debate. What do we know we need to be doing during the demo debate? Flowing. There should really be no need for a computer out. Unless your lab leaders have told you otherwise. At the end, we're going to have you vote. In order to vote, you need to have a good reason. So we are going to introduce our teams. We'll start off with the affirmative.
Okay, the app. Ben, you want to go? Introduce Henry.
We're out.
This
Okay.
is me and Nick.
This is Ben Delonte, debated for MBA. He's a freshman, rising freshman at Emory. Next to Ben
Greatest
is...
debater that's not here.
I mean, like, next to him, Nick left, debated for James Madison, now a grad assistant at University of Nevada, Las Vegas. On the negative, we have Maggie Wells, who's an Emory debater, and I don't know where she, Edina?
Yeah.
Edina High School. And Jackie Steinem, who is coaching at Harvard Westlake and debated for UCO.
Hashtag women for wages.
Women for wages.
Women for wages. They don't have a hashtag.
And I'm gonna like
You do,
flow up
but
here for
I'm not sure
everybody,
it's fine.
so you can kind of see too if you need help. I know it might be like hard.
If you don't catch everything, don't panic. It's okay. We're going to try to go nice and slow for everyone. But if you don't catch something, it'll be fine. I'm sure you'll keep up just fine. Just do your best.
I'm not gonna have time for us because we're just gonna like, you know, you can just be like waiting for time and I'll just like.
Yeah.
So for those of you, sorry, real quickly,
No, you're good.
some people have already asked about the tabs. This is a pre-created template. They will tell you how many sheets of paper you need based off of the number of advantages and stuff.
And like I'll rename, like do you see where it says DA, DA2, DA3, like if they read wages, which I'm going to assume they are since they're women for wages, I will rename that for them.
Any questions before we start?
Everyone has what they need. You got pen, paper, got enough paper for
I'm gonna need
everything.
a Google form.
Can y'all do me a favor when Nick walks in? Can you give him like a huge round?
It'd be funny.
Because for fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up! And with that,
Don't stop for that much.
Hang on a second.
Okay. You will want 3 sheets of paper for the YMC.
wait, 3 seconds?
Yes, 3 separate sheets.
It's okay. Did someone start the camera?
Yes.
Okay, is anybody not ready? Advantage 1 is competitiveness. Current restrictions and limits on the H-1B program are crushing U.S. competitiveness, innovation, and growth. Fixing the program is necessary to maintain a strong U.S. position globally that's sang in 18. Educated foreign entrepreneurs started looking at alternatives to U.S. citizenship. Hardships have increased thanks to the heightened vetting of H-1B visas. Immigration is critical for our nation's competitive position. Immigrants started half the country's billion-dollar startup companies. The H-1B visa is the primary avenue for skilled immigrants to enter. For every H-1B worker, 5 jobs are created. It's not too late. People still want to be here. The problem is we give them no choice. And limiting H-1Bs kills the U.S. economy in a vital sector. H-1Bs have a multiplier effect that creates jobs and innovation, GIA in 17. The decision to revamp the H-1B visas could prove counter-effective. Trump's decision to review the visa allowance already appears to be having an impact. The move may be misguided in terms of creating IT jobs in the U.S. Trump's decision will further the protectionist agenda. It could have macroeconomic implications. The workforce will decline. And U.S. economic competitiveness prevents great power war. Colby and Latow in 14. American leadership and engagement remain essential. The U.S. must compete. It can restore not only its economic health, but also its strength for the long haul. If the U.S. wants the international system to reflect a system in which the global commons are protected and conflicts are curtailed, it needs to sustain relative power. Preserving America's international position will require it to restore its economic vitality. This process of renewal must begin with analyzing America's competitive position. And tech innovation deters global conflict. That's Taylor in 4. Technological capacities have a role in calculations of war. Nations on the technological ascent experience a corresponding change in their global stature. Great powers which fail to maintain their place at the technological frontier drift and fade. The balance of offensive and defensive military technology affects the incentives for war. And the decline of relative economic power triggers great power war and undermines the international order. That's Khalilzad in 11. Other economies are growing faster than ours. This could alter the global distribution of power. If U.S. policymakers fail to act, it is not a question of whether, but when a new international order will emerge. It could intensify geopolitical competition and undercut our will to preclude international crises. The stakes are high. Multipolar systems have been unstable, resulting in major wars among the great powers. There would be a heightened possibility of arms races, miscalc, or all-out conflict. A stable financial condition at home has enabled America to have an expansive role. We can no longer take this for granted. Unless we get our economic house in order, domestic stagnation will undermine our ability to deal with growing international problems, leading the world towards a new dangerous era of multipolarity. And U.S. superiority is key to deterring great power wars containing prolific beating the terrorists. Brands and Edelman 17. America confronts military and geopolitical challenges more severe than at any time. The result is a creeping crisis of American military primacy as Washington's margin of superiority is diminished. It will undermine U.S. alliances, weaken deterrence. The U.S. military remains far superior, but its power is becoming dangerously insufficient for the international order. This military dominance has constituted the global strategy, committed to fostering a global environment in which liberal values could flourish and rogue states, nuclear prolif, and terrorism would be suppressed. If Washington cut back, alliances would lose credibility, stability would be eroded, and crises would go unaddressed. The number of challenges has multiplied. The U.S. confronts rogue states and great power competition. Advantage 2 is U.S.-Indian relations. H-1B limits and restrictions threaten overall U.S.-Indian relations. It antagonizes a growing strategic bilateral partnership, GIA 17. Tightening the H-1B visa could have implications for bilateral relations. Indian IT companies have invested $2 billion in the U.S. It may not be a wise economic move to force out these companies. Modi has been lobbied to take the H-1B visa matter up with Trump. The U.S.'s relationship with India is important. Trump has a lot at stake in approaching the H-1B visa review. And it's a foundation of overall U.S.-Indian relations. Cooperation on other issues is limited by fights over H-1Bs because they build economic and personal ties between the countries. That's New India Express 18. Washington and New Delhi want an ambitious relationship. We need a full-scale relationship, including H-1B work visas. H-1B visas are an important part of the overall relationship, and we have to increase our people-to-people connections, and we should be celebrating the immigrants. And strong relations are key to spreading democracy globally and stabilizing India-Pakistan relations. Round Burma and 18. The U.S.-India relationship has tremendous potential. Working together can advance prosperity, security, and sustainable development around the world. The two share enduring long-term interests, a stable Indo-Pacific, a world in which democracy flourishes, and reciprocal goodwill. And the U.S. and India are increasingly indispensable democratic partners. To address emerging threats, the U.S. and India must invest in greater coordinated capacity. That shared effort underwrites the bet they make on a shared future. The backbone of the relationship will be the ties who drive business, innovation, education, and beyond. And relations are key to global stability. They are not guaranteed right now, but building economic ties is vital. Round Burma and 18. Strengthening U.S.-India relations is a positive development. Strong U.S.-India relations are an important priority for global security and prosperity. Much is riding on the relationship. As geopolitical shifts strain the international system, it will only become more important to work closely. Washington and Delhi need to find ways to ensure that policies can deepen the relationship. And Indo-Pak war escalates and kill billions otherwise. Keck and 17. Billions could die if India and Pakistan start a nuclear war. The two countries fought 3 major wars. This doesn't even include armed skirmishes. Pakistani leaders leave their nuclear threshold ambiguous, and it's not hard to imagine a scenario where the two sides would stumble into a nuclear war. And strong relations are key to preventing democratic backsliding. They're on the brink now globally. Ayer and Gilbert 18. Democracy is coming under renewed strain worldwide. Governments are attacking freedom of the press, reducing transparency, and closing space for civic engagement in civil society. The U.S. and India, as the world's 2 largest democracies, must build a strong partnership. The two face new challenges. It's only natural that the world's 2 largest democracies would band together to deepen democracy. And global democratic backsliding is on the rise. Renewed commitment from the U.S. would reverse those trends and fall. That's Diamond 17. The world is facing a crisis of liberal democracy, retreating in Europe, Russia, and China. The U.S. must counter autocracies and reboot democratic values. And liberal democracy solves existential impacts. That's Kasparov and 17. The existential threat is very real. Terrorist movements, extremist parties, North Korea threatening nuclear blackmail. They all want to turn the world back to a dark past. America cannot lead the world on democracy if there is no unity. It is an opportunity for them to rediscover that making America great begins with believing that America can be great. There will be setbacks, but the U.S. cannot quit. Democracy is the only proven remedy for every crisis that plagues the world today. War, famine, poverty, terrorism, all are exacerbated by authoritarian regimes. There is no weapon or wall more powerful than America. Solvency. Plan. The United States federal government should increase the annual H-1B visa limit to escalate to meet demand and exempt spouses and children from the total visa limit. That proposal would solve Times New India 18. Senators introduced legislation that seeks to increase the annual H-1B visa limit. The legislation is supported by top American IT companies, including Microsoft and Facebook. The bill focuses on H-1B visas for industries. Taking these steps to foster a vibrant economy would attract the best students in the world to U.S. universities. The bill creates a market-based escalator to allow the supply of H-1B visas to meet demand. Up to 110,000 additional H-1B visas may be granted. And changes to the H-1B program matter. Applicants pay attention. Can point 18. The H-1B visa is under siege. Trump's Buy American order suggested that H-1B should be more difficult to get. The trend will become clearer in coming months. H-1B hopefuls will be watching.
We're going to discuss that first.
Oh, let's do profit.
Okay. So the plan increases the amount of H-1B visas to meet demand.
Yes.
How many people will be given visas? What kind of demand exists now?
So we obviously don't. Well, answering your first question, we obviously don't write in the plan text exactly how many it would be because you don't get to pick out of that. But our piece of Times of India evidence on the solvency page suggests that it would likely be something around 110,000 additional H-1B visas.
Do these individuals want to get visas now and they just can't? Or what sort of
the
incentives does the plan
pamphlet
offer?
evidence that we read says that people who are looking for H-1B visas pay attention to the increases in the program,
Sure.
and thus they would
That
apply
doesn't
for
actually
it if
answer
there
the
were
question that
more.
I'm asking you.
Okay.
How do you incentivize people to apply for visas after the plan is passed?
Couple different answers. So one, we think we don't have to incentivize them. People already want them right now. Two is that the part of the second half of the plan text changes how the H-1B visa program works. So it means that people's spouses and children are not included in the total visa limit.
And what is the scenario for war in a world where U.S. competitiveness declines? Like, who strikes us? Who do we strike?
We got a couple different scenarios for this. So the piece of Taylor evidence talks about technological innovation. The idea is that, there's a bunch of other countries who are also developing new technology. So China is exacerbating tensions.
So China?
So China in the South China Sea, Russia is expanding their sphere of influence.
So, sorry, U.S. competitiveness declines, and then China is just like, okay, let's start.
Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that, obviously. Our argument is that if we don't have relative power over other countries, it means that they feel like they can exacerbate conflicts, which would then escalate because people think they can use those weapons.
Okay, but would U.S. power decline to the point where countries who spend like 5 times less on defense than we do, or like
if we don't have the money to spend on the military, then we wouldn't have the ability to spend 5 times more than other countries.
How do you incentivize innovation? This is another one of your internal links on the first advantage.
Well, the idea is that workers from H-1B visas are obviously like super smart people, so they come over here, they make new companies. Our piece of evidence says that for every job they create 5 new jobs.
Okay.
The idea is obviously more smart people equals more new technologies.
Another question about that is there's no card that talks about the connection between the IT sector and the economy. Why is the IT sector key to the economy?
I disagree with that. The piece of the GIA evidence, one of those cards definitely indicates that it is integral to the economy. The idea is that the way that the world is moving right now is towards high-tech sectors, right?
Okay, can I ask one last question before time goes up? So the India advantage, you're like U.S.-India relations declined and then Indo-Pak war. Can you explain the internal link between those two things?
The idea is that there are tensions between India and Pakistan that mean that a war is inevitable right now. The U.S. and India working together means that they could check back those tensions.
Okay, which countries are democratically backsliding now?
I don't know off the top of my head, Ben. Do you want to?
All right. So, what's the plan do? Yes.
I mean, it says that we're going to reduce, the United States federal government should reduce the limit on, there should be more H-1B visas.
Increase H-1B visas.
Spouses and children.
Great. How many advantages are there to the affirmative plan? 2. What are they? Give me one. Competitiveness. Give me a quick summary of competitiveness.
With more H-1B visas, we have a better economy to make us more globally economically competitive.
Better economy, we get better, we get to prevent wars. Good. Second one.
U.S.-India relations.
Good.
So,
tell me about it. You have 15
so
seconds.
Okay, basically if the United States and India start working together, then we can prevent a war between India and Pakistan and stop democracy from dwindling in the world.
Awesome. How many sheets of paper do you have currently?
3.
3. 2 for the advantages and 1 for what?
Solvency.
Solvency. They're going to get up and start attacking it. A couple things. Anything you notice about Lauren's flow?
Not very good.
It's great. Who is the flow for?
Her.
Her. Okay, she may have spelt some names wrong. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes, I wrote down totally different stuff. Is that okay? Yes. What do you see in the 1NC column? What do you notice the difference?
Color.
Different color. Everyone should be flowing on a different color. Okay?
Yep. One other quick thing, like some judges flow prospects, some don't. I tend to like write down if I think there's something important that comes up in prospects. So, for example, Nick said at one point it's about 110,000 H1Bs. I thought that might be important later, so I wrote it down. I just think about it.
I'm good.
Oh, lastly, what speech is Maggie giving?
1NC.
No.
That's Maggie.
Sorry, for you all don't know, that's Maggie. She asked Nick questions. So what speech is Maggie giving?
2NC.
The 2NC, because what was Jazzy doing during cross-examination? Prepping, right? So should Jazzy need to take any prep time?
Nope.
Nope.
Alright, you should pretty much never take 1NC prep unless maybe what?
You need to
If
ask
a new
the
ask,
question.
then it's probably okay. But otherwise, probably shouldn't take 1NC prep if you know what the ask is. Right? That's what the pre-round prep is for, which they did so much of.
It's so
So much pre-round prep.
So much for prep. All right, so I'm going to give a roadmap, okay? So you're only going to need one new sheet of paper, okay? I know, just one. Just one. We will make one. You just need one,
So
okay?
many murdered trees.
Let me know when you have time. All right, so you're just going to need that one new sheet of paper, and then after that, we're going to use the pieces of paper from the 1AC. And the first one you're going to need right after the new sheet is going to be the solvency page. So wherever you flow the solvency cards and like the plan, that's the second sheet that I'm going to be going to. And I'll remind you in my speech when I'm going there. After we do solvency, we're going to go to the leadership advantage, competitiveness, the first advantage, the first one, whatever you called it. Okay? Then after that, there's only one sheet of paper left. It's going to be the India advantage. All right. Is everyone good on the order? You have your pieces of paper in the right order? You got everything you need? Pens, everything? All right. First off is the wages dissat. High-skilled wages are up and prevent economic decline. Grisham, 17. Tech employment grew by 3%. Occupations across other industries increased by 2. Affirmed the strength of the industry and attests its essential standing in the economy. The average wage for tech was double the national. Tech employment outpaces other segments. Digital continues to be a driving force. Next, expanding H-1B visas lowers wages and stifles productive innovation. Benderly in 15. H-1B visa crowds out employment of other workers and leads to lower wages. H-1Bs given to a firm do not raise the firm's patenting or employment. H-1Bs replace other workers and are paid less and increase profits. And wage growth is a crucial driver of economic growth and increases economic resiliency. That's RAIM 17. Consumers drive the economy. Consumers are increasingly drawing from savings rather than wage increases. Sluggish wage growth put pressure on spending, and a slowdown would pull growth lower. Confidence measures are high, has not translated into spending. So far, the consumer has been pushing our economy forward. Income growth increasingly threatening to undermine the consumer. Growth remains dependent on consumer spending. Unless wages pick up, consumers may have little room to finance. Next, economic decline causes diversionary war. That escalates. Foster in 16. If the economy tanks, expect Trump to engage in a diversionary war. Psychological traits predispose leaders to belligerent behavior. When faced with the faltering economy, leaders who are distrustful and simplistic develop simplistic but risky solutions, utilizing military force. The model would predict that Trump would respond to even a minor downturn with force. Now, go to solvency. math can't solve. It's about process delays, not numbers. Lowell and 10. Timely processing of visas often is confused with the perception the U.S. is too restrictive on temporary immigrants. The number of STEM immigrants is hardly worthy of the claims about restrictions. Next, telecommuting solves the need for H-1B visas, as Swanner 17. Remote work culture might ease tensions. H-1B jobs went to computer-related occupations. A stronger remote culture could help heal the issues related to H-1B outsourcing. Working remotely is something professionals are actively seeking. Now, go to the first advantage. Expansion doesn't solve. You need to address the quality of life for immigrants. WADA et al. 9. Visa considerations did not weigh heavily in decisions to leave. Retaining highly skilled immigrant workers will require more than expanding visas. The U.S. will need to address opportunities over the quality of life. And there's no internal link between the IT sector and the economy. Even if this sector is hurt, it won't ruin our competitiveness. And next, restrictions on H-1Bs are good. They force companies to train, recruit, and innovate. Lippman and 17. Jobs go to H-1B visa holders every day. Jobs that can be performed by workers. We're seeing widespread exploitation of the H-1B program. Foreign IT workers led to the layoff of 18,000 employees. Importing workers doesn't save money. American workers create value. The idea that foreign IT workers are cheaper is a fallacy. Will H-1B visa reform prevent companies from hiring the talent they need? No. Will compel them to think carefully about which needs they can satisfy. Also, they will have to invest in recruiting programs that unleash American workers to do what they do best. Next, innovation isn't key to economic growth. Samuelson, 18. Why has economic growth slowed when innovation appears to be accelerating? Flagging productivity gains aren't the main cause of the slowdown. Nearly 3/5 of the slowdown reflects change in the labor. A tidal wave of new products pale in comparison to earlier inventions. Negative trends, the economy reflect deep social problems that resist change. Explosion of new tech seems to have fooled us into thinking that innovation will restore our economic vitality. Next, tech innovation doesn't deter conflict. The sector that H-1Bs affects is not military technology, which is why their impact makes no sense, which was also established in Cross-X. Next, there's no impact to competitiveness. That's Brooks, Eikenberry, and Woolforth 12. The budgetary demands of deep engagement is a moving target. Retrenchment advocates write as if levels of defense spending are necessary. This is not the case. Increase was caused by the effort to field and use military tools. These drivers of increased spending have begun to be reversed. America's strategy can be sustained with cuts. Given the vast gap in military capabilities between the U.S. and China, China's economic rise will not demand an increase in U.S. military efforts. Next, U.S. hegemony is inevitable for the foreseeable future. That's Beckley, 11. Hegemony is consolidated. Power is entrenched. Other countries accept it as a fact of life. The U.S. has become the greatest superpower ever. Dominant economic military capabilities combine signs with a high development and low dependency. U.S. military spending is 8 times greater than the number. The U.S. ignored the Security Council. American contributions to the IMF are sufficient to give the U.S. veto power over any major policy change. These capabilities translate into influence. Hegemony is a structural power, the power to shape the normative framework within states relate. Traditional theorists assume that hegemons get bogged down, but this does not apply with no rival. Next. Trump is the last person who should be leading the free world. He produces erratic foreign policy decisions and destroys credibility with allies, which removes any benefit of hegemony in the short term. That is Walt in 18. It's become clear that Trump is neither a realist nor a skilled, knowledgeable statesman. His handling of foreign policy appears to offer the worst of both worlds. A true realist would understand the importance of diplomacy, would not have left dozens of top foreign policy posts unfulfilled, and would not be gutting the Department of State. There is no reason to believe that Trump has a sophisticated understanding of foreign affairs. His foreign policy is essentially chaotic, confusing, and inept. The ship of state is now being steered by an impulsive captain lacking accurate charts or even a clear destination. He will continue to pick fights with no purpose, encourage instability in areas that the United States should prefer to be tranquil, fuel anti-Americanism, and will act so erratically that longtime U.S. friends lose confidence in our steadiness. Go to the Indian bench. H-1Bs don't matter for the overall relationship. Raposa, 17. The H-1B was a non-issue in the meeting between Trump and Modi. The H-1B issue is not simply a non-starter. The battle has been won by the Americans. Next, there are a lot of alternative causes to the U.S.-India relationship that the affirmative cannot solve. There's the America First strategy, the Paris Climate Agreement, and the recent Iran deal. Next, there is no Indo-Pak war. Even pessimists admit there's no escalation. Montgomery and Edelman, 15. attitude towards the India-Pakistan rivalry are fatalism and complacence. Low-level hostilities will not escalate. The stalemate is likely to persist. It is unclear that India can gain advantage. Nuclear strikes will discourage retaliation. Next. There's no internal link to Indo-Pak war. There's no reason why U.S.-India relations stops that from escalating. And next, democracy does not solve war. That is Ghatak et al. 17. Democracy lowers the hazard of armed conflict. Efforts to assess democratic pacifism have largely ignored rivalry as a context conditioning behavior. Fundamental to peace is the notion that dyadic democracy will associate lower militarized aggression. The presence of an external threat may be the key mechanism by which democratic leaders fail to resolve problems nonviolently. External threats clearly increase conflict. We find more consistent evidence that democratic pacifism does not survive. Audience costs, resolve, electoral pressures are powerful forces and make it difficult for leaders to trust one another, which inhibits resolution.
You ready, Brian?
Yes, I am.
Okay. The ONC has kind of forwarded the argument that U.S. economic decline is inevitable for a wide variety of reasons. So there's a massive workforce shortage right now. There's large increases in technology sectors outside of the U.S. that's kind of drawing workers outside of how the U.S. operates. Why do you think that high wages would offset those factors that will make economic decline inevitable?
Again, I got lost because you did not ask a question at the beginning. So if I understand your question correctly, are you asking about the link argument?
Your impact is terminally non-unique because lots of other things are going to cause econ decline. Why do wages offset that?
No, that's not our argument.
Would you explain your arguments to me then, please?
Sure, yeah. If we're talking about the wages disadvantage, our argument in terms of uniqueness, high-skilled wages are up and prevent economic decline. You haven't identified any sort of brink claim for why economic decline in relation to your internal link argument is inevitable or is going to happen faster than ours.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused about how the internal link of your data set operates. So my understanding of your uniqueness evidence is that high-tech wages are increasing right now, but your internal link piece of evidence about that being key to the economy is about consumer spending and consumers having higher wages. Can you remedy for me that disconnect?
So you do know that high-skilled workers are also consumers.
I am familiar with that idea. I'm a little bit confused why there are enough of the consumers to trigger your internal link.
Enough of the consumers to trigger the internal link. The relationship between our uniqueness argument and the internal link is that high-skilled workers, wages rather, are up right now, and those contribute to consumer spending. Our internal link says that we need to keep consumer spending on the up and up to prevent economic decline.
So how much consumer spending do we need, I guess?
Much like your answers in 180 cross-sex, I can't give you an exact number. Okay. However, our evidence is pretty specific that gives different rates in the RAIM evidence, and towards the bottom it talks about growth being heavily dependent on consumer spending, and that there's little room to sort of there's little wiggle room.
Awesome, thanks. On to solvency, I'm a little bit confused. Why would telecommunication resolve U.S.-India relations?
It's actually pretty simple because you don't have any evidence or warrants in your evidence that explains why we have to have H-1B visas and why workers have to be in the U.S. in order to create better relations.
Our argument is that it creates kind of better cultural ties because there's like exchange programs and things like that.
You can
why
also
does telecommunication do that?
You can also do that through telecommunication. We have the internet now.
I'm sorry, telecommunication means that people can meet face-to-face?
Well, that's literally what the internet does. Have you done a Skype meeting?
The first advantage, I want to ask about the last card you read here. This piece of walled evidence that says that Trump shouldn't lead the free world.
Yep.
So your argument is that he's like erratic, he's unpredictable, stuff like that. What do you think would happen if, the U.S. suddenly lost power?
The U.S. suddenly lost power?
Yeah.
Our argument is that that wouldn't make that big of a difference in a world of Trump because he's already sort of insulted all of our allies, and he has made U.S. foreign policy and the U.S. image already look really bad.
Isn't cross-ex fun to watch?
I know.
Yes. Isn't it easy to not pay attention to what they're saying and just get involved in how they're talking?
Yeah.
All right, quick thumbs up, thumbs down. How do we do in the 1NC? Flow in the 1NC? All right, let's talk about it.
Some authors.
How many sheets of paper do you have now?
4.
4. What is the new sheet of paper that you added?
Wages.
Wages. What type of argument is the wages argument?
Disadvantage.
A disadvantage. What else do we call disadvantages? Off case. They do not attack the harms or the solvency. Do you need prep time? Oh. Stand up to it. We'll still talk.
Yeah, we should.
So we have the wages disad. Who can explain to me what the wages disad says? Courtney.
So the wages decide basically said that wages are high now, and if they let loose of the restrictions, then more people are gonna want one job, and then they're gonna offer less wages for that one job until only one person wants it. So if they let more people in, it will be like more workers available, so they don't have to offer a lot of money for one job.
Okay. So specifically, what sector are they talking about the wages dispatch? High-tech jobs, right? High wages job, or high-tech job. So right now, wages are high. The plan causes wages to lower. What is the impact to wages lowering?
Well, it means consumers spend less money, and because of that, the economy is weaker. There's an economic collapse due to the diversionary war.
Great. Awesome. Is everyone go ahead?
Yeah, one thing I also want to point out that's like super important that you should always do in the 1NC is that they read impact defense to a bunch of the ass impacts, i.e. no impact to competitiveness, there's like a no impact to India relations, I mean no Indo-Pak war. Why is that important? What happens if the 1NC doesn't read defense to the ass? Yeah. Yeah, okay, they conceding, right? But a little more, can you explain? Yeah.
So if the 1NC doesn't read the defense, and basically the affirmative now can expand more on this in the 2AC, and then they won't be able to cover it, and they'll have to waste all of their time on it in the negative block.
Okay, so I guess what I'm getting at, maybe I didn't ask the question right, is like, if you don't read defense, like let's say the AFRIC in this case read an Indo-Pak war impact, or like India-Pakistan war is going to be really bad. It's important that the negative reads defense to that, because otherwise they've conceded that the Indo-Pak war is going to be really, really bad, right? So it's a way to kind of push back against these like big ass impacts and prove that they're not going to be as bad as the affirmative says.
Y'all get that?
Is anyone confused by that? Okay.
Let's talk about the case arguments real quickly. What's the first sheet of paper that Jazzy went to? Solvency. How many solvency arguments did she make? Two. Any confusion about that?
No.
Oh.
Ben is having some technological
Ben, all right, let's talk. No worries.
Two arguments on the solvency. What's the next sheet of paper she went to? Competitiveness. How many arguments did she make on competitiveness?
Like 8.
8. Question for you. Drop down to the second argument. Who got her second argument on competitiveness? Aaron, what's it say?
She said the affirmative provided no internal room and that the plan won't rule in time.
Okay, great. And who was the author of the card she read there?
She didn't read a card.
There was no card, right? Why? What do we call these types of arguments?
An analytic.
Analytical arguments, right? So notice that Jazzy didn't just get up and read a whole bunch of pieces of evidence, right? That's not an engaging 1NC. She has analytical arguments split in addition to the cards that she read.
Yeah.
We good now, Ben? Awesome. Any questions before we start the 2AC?
Oh, one quick thing too, right? So in the 1NC, she put her off case before she did the case, right? So that's really important when you're negative, and in the 1NC, you want to make sure you do that because like you can't really win a debate without like All right. Javante.
All right. So the order is the U.S. leadership advantage.
So the first one.
That's competitiveness.
Whatever you call it. Okay.
Then the U.S.-India relations advantage. Then solvency. And then the dissat.
And make sure you're comfortable. You gotta project.
All right. Is everyone good?
Great.
The H-1B program is integral to U.S. economic competitiveness. It's key to high-skilled tech workers to start and expand business in the U.S. They say expansion doesn't solve. This just isn't true. It's key to solving because it's the only way to get more immigrants into the U.S. and start new businesses. The WADA evidence is additionally just awful. One is it says that the recession limited opportunities in the U.S. It's been 10 years and job access has expanded since then. Second is that this is an AF card. It says that family immigration procedures are a serious issue in which the plan changes. They say the IT sector is not key. One is it is key. It's been the major driver of U.S. growth and has spillover effects across different sectors of the U.S. economy. Second is we don't just access IT. We create jobs and innovation across other sectors of the economy, like services, for example. Next is their Litman card. They say restrictions on H-1B visas are good. The Sang evidence in the 1AC says that increasing H-1B visas is key to getting them to immigrants to come to the U.S. and create new startups and job growth, which offsets any potential negative effects. The Litman evidence is aspirational at best. It says that American workers should fill the worker gap, not that they will. Next is their Samuelson evidence. It's just wrong. One is innovation is the only way to multiple employment opportunities across the economy, and it keeps up with other countries as they become technological leaders also. Second is that Samuelson says that economic growth would still slow down because of demographic changes, but we solve that by bringing new workers and their families into the U.S. Independently, they haven't answered the second neutral link. Bringing in more productive workers on the H-1B visa program increases competition and job opportunities. They say that tech doesn't deter or doesn't lead to military readiness. One is our argument doesn't just have to be deterrence. It also ties every country together to contain conflict through technological development. Second is tech leadership does deter conflict. Almost every technology is dual use in nature in some way, which means that tech is key to maintain military power. Next is their Brooks evidence. They say there's no impact to competitiveness, but that's not right. U.S. competitiveness deters great power wars by ensuring global trade flows and stability of the liberal international order. The Brooks evidence that they read here says that budgetary demands are constantly changing, which is an apt argument since it means that we need to maintain strong economic growth to respond to those fluctuations. This evidence is also only about the balance of militaries in the world, which only answers half of our scenario. The app ensures we can effectively create and utilize leadership to check back against conflicts. Next is the Beckley evidence. It's that U.S. hegemony is inevitable. This is not true. There are rising threats from Russia, China, terrorist organizations that seek to usurp U.S. authority. The Beckley evidence does not assume Russia expanding their sphere of influence, nor China aggressively building islands in the South China Sea. The warning is that military spending is high, but that's only possible post-plan because we need a strong economy to fund that. Next is the Wall evidence. One, if they're right about Trump being erratic, do not vote for a world where Trump is dealing with foreign policy in a declining U.S. Second, is their evidence is looking too short-term. Trump's in office for 2 more years. Hegemony changes over the process of things like 5 to 10 years. Third is this argument is disproven by the status quo. Trump's obnoxious but hasn't blown up the world. There's no reason he'll do it in the next year. The India relations advantage. Our argument is that increasing the H-1B visa cap is key to U.S.-India relationship by better facilitating immigration that causes intergovernmental coordination and cultural exchanges. First is the Raposa evidence. It's that H-1Bs don't matter for the relationship, which isn't true. They're the backbone of our economic and cultural relationship because we can get high-skilled workers. Their Raposa evidence is bad. It doesn't say H-1Bs don't matter. It says that people haven't brought up increasing the cap in meetings because they're worried Trump would say no. Next is the all causes argument. There are no all causes. We influence economic, cultural ties, which are the backbone of any geopolitical relationship. Their warrants don't make sense. None of the issues they listed were mentioned in the last bilateral summit. Next is the Montgomery evidence. It's that there would be no Indo-Pak war, but that's wrong. Pakistan and India have both deployed tactical nuclear weapons and brinksmanship, which pushes both countries on hair trigger alert. Only the app can solve this by facilitating military and economic ties that contain conflict. The next argument is that relations don't solve. U.S.-India relations solve conflicts. It provides third-party diplomacy options, access to trade and deterrence through assistance. Next is the Ghatak evidence. Their third argument is that democracies don't solve war. This communist babble is nonsense. Democracies don't go to war because their governments constrain warmongers from fighting. Their Ghatak evidence doesn't even say that our theory is wrong. Rather, it can't explain every single geopolitical decision. Global democracy spread is necessary now more so than ever because countries will fall under Russia's sphere of influence and start fighting conflicts. Now to the solvency page. Their first argument is that we can't solve because of process delays, but they have not answered that the plan ramps up visas to meet demand. There's a huge demand for H-1B visas now, which means voting Act fixes the problem with the current visa system. Also, we clean up the process for applying for an H-1B visa and thus solve the problem that their author thinks is bad. Next is the Swanner evidence. Their argument also doesn't matter at all for the app. Our competitiveness advantage is about the U.S. remaining a global technological leaders, which means we have to have the workers physically in the U.S. And the U.S.-India relations advantage is about cultural and economic exchanges that aren't possible over the internet. Additionally, that only solves for part of the problem because even if they can telecommute, that there's constraints on that only having workers in the U.S. can solve. Now to the disadvantage. Economic collapse is inevitable and only the app can solve. A is that immigration is integral to economic growth because it's the only way to create new technological innovation and jobs. Visas result in more employment, which means that we are way better for the economy than the status quo. Second is wage growth is insufficient to fix the economy. There are massive demographic changes that lower productivity. If we can't keep up with innovating tech, then it doesn't matter how much wage growth we have because it will all be going to jobs that are useless. There's a skill gap that is killing U.S. economic growth now. Only the plan can reverse it. De Silva in 18. A shortage of skilled workers damages the country's economy. The move could create a shortage in core fields like tech. These measures will hurt the American economy. Second is that there is no impact. Trump is more likely to just rant on Twitter or conduct more airstrikes against Syria, which obviously don't escalate to nuclear conflict. Their foster evidence is bad. It's a hypothetical what if about Trump before he was in office. Even if the app hurts wages, it hurt them in the long term, not the short term, which means we'd only affect the economy after Trump left office. There's no uniqueness for this dis-ad. Their Gershom card says that employment has grown and tech development is key to the economy, not that wages are growing, which means this is a great app card because we expand job opportunities and tech development. Also, wages are low now, bursting in 18. Wages are not growing. They're slack in the job market. Productivity is slow. Wage growths have been stuck around 2.5% for 2 years. There are also multiple causes to wage decline. Russell et al. in 18. 6 reasons pay is like. Declining unionization, collapse in membership played a key role in holding down wages. Restraints on competition, non-compete clauses reduce wages. A lagging minimum wage that has not increased since 2009, its purchasing power has never returned. Globalization and automation made it easier to find cheaper alternatives to paying for workers. Sluggish productivity, outsourcing. Wages for work performed by contractors tend to be lower. Competition for workers is intense. The aging population could be a factor. Retiring baby boomers are being replaced by millennials who earn less. H-1B visas don't lower wages. Empirical data proves AIC in 18. H-1B workers positively impact our economy and employment. Native-born workers. H-1B workers do not drive down wages. A 1 percentage point increase in foreign STEM workers increases wages 8% points. Wage growth in occupation. H-1B petition was substantially higher. Even if the app decreases wages, the economic benefit of it outweighs. Smith in 18. Skilled immigrants, key part of the U.S. economy. Their entrepreneurial experience faster economic growth. Worries vastly overblown. That's marked at vastly overblown.
No, just tell me about it.
All right, you ready? All right. I want to start on the first advantage. You mentioned that there are rising threats from Russia, China, terrorist organizations. But you haven't outlined like any, internal link, like sort of scenario about who would start conflict and which terrorist organizations. Can you give me any specific example?
Okay, well, specifically in the 2AC, I mentioned China building islands in the South China Sea for military deployments, Russia expanding their sphere of influence, all of which create a lower threshold for conflict. How does expanding
H-1B visas prevent Russia from expanding their sphere of influence?
We have internal links to getting to that. Our argument is that competitiveness, increasing military power, deterrence, all of these things make it less likely for Russia.
I want to know which card in the 1AC you think is specific enough about H-1B visa programs and the relationship to overall military deterrence with countries like Russia, China, and then other terrorist organizations.
We have cards that say that H-1B visas are key to competitiveness, and cards that say competitiveness is key to that.
Card. All right, I want to talk about the Trump argument. So you heard a lot of evidence, right, about U.S. superiority, hegemony, and all of those things being really good. What card do you think you've read that says Trump can wield those powers effectively?
Okay, well, one, Trump has been in office for 2 years. There's no reason why he would escalate a conflict in the next 2 years.
Why?
Well, it's been 2 years. He won't do it in the next 2
You
years.
don't think he's escalated conflict like already within 2 years?
Yes, he might have escalated low-level conflict like airstrikes, but that is not the same.
That's low-level conflict?
Yes.
Striking Syria
that is
low
not the
level?
same as like a nuclear escalation.
Yikes. All right, let's talk about the India advantage. India
Go
advantage.
for
So
airstrikes
to be
outweighing
clear,
nuclear war.
to be clear, your democracy impact says that maintaining democracy prevents war, right? Because countries that are democratic are like less likely to start wars, right? That's the argument. So India and Pakistan are both democracies. So I guess if democracy is so good and prevents all wars, why are U.S.-India relations key to prevent that?
Okay, that's kind of iffy about like the democratic structure. I would say that this is also separate because it's a specific geopolitical conflict that has different dynamics that.
Yeah, but if democracy is so awesome, right, and prevents all these conflicts.
The Kasparov card is about North Korea, Russia, China, territorializations, and other conflicts. It doesn't
Why are
specifically
H-1B
isolate
visas
Indo-Pak
key to
war.
resolve the North Korean conflict?
Well, it says that democracy is key to resolve that. So, do you want me to describe the interlink from H-1B
Yeah, I'm wondering
visas
what you
to
think Trump is
democracy?
going to do to strengthen democracy.
Well, again, our interlink is more long-term than just the next few years with Trump. Even then,
But you
it's
have no
about the
evidence about
relationship between U.S. and India necessary for democratic norms.
Okay, we're going to give them a couple minutes to prep the Gen-Z. Let's talk about a couple of arguments that were made here. So the first thing I want to point out, did Ben read any cards on case?
No.
No, why is that? Okay, that's usually something you want to do in the 2AC on case, right? He knows his 1AC so well because he's debated it a million times, but regardless, he knows his 1AC well enough that he can extend the warrant for the 2AC, and your 1AC should be structured to answer predictable 1NC arguments, right? The wages to stats probably going to be a thing this year. The brain drain TA probably going to be a thing this year, right? So your 1AC should be structured in order to, so you can get up in the 2AC and not have to read cards on case most of the time. If you are reading a bunch of cards on case, that's problematic because you should be able to use your 1AC to answer it. Where did he read cards? Yeah, the off case, right? The wages DA, right? And so that's usually what you want to do because your 1AC may not have the specifics enough to answer that, so you're almost always going to read cards on it this time. Another thing I want to mention is I thought Jazzy had a really good cross-ex question when she was like, India and Pakistan are both democracies. Your ask is basically democracies prevent war. How did you answer that? How did Ben answer that? What did he contest? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Either one of you. Okay.
Okay. So he said that although India and Pakistan are India and Pakistan can still cause a nuclear war because the tensions are high enough. But if the United States joins in, then they can form a stronger bond between two democracies.
Okay. Does anyone want to elaborate, add on to that? Yeah. Yes. Right. Right. He kind of contests this whole idea, right? The premise of her question, which I thought was good. Yeah, first.
Why was that such a good question for Jazzy? What was she doing that made that such an effective question? Kyle. Okay, good. What else?
It fits the road.
Okay, yeah. Last one.
It kind of puts them in a bind if we said, yeah, they are democracies, and they're exactly.
Yeah, what I want to underscore here is that even though we have arguments on different sheets of paper, those arguments all interact, right? So what Jazzy was doing was she was taking a big view of the debate and saying, you made this argument here on this sheet of paper, but it also applies to this sheet of paper. How do those logically fit in? So one of the things you all want to do is make sure that you're taking a big view. Pretend you're the judge like us and think about how do all of these different arguments interact.
One other thing I want to mention, right? So Ben makes an argument on the relations advantage that there's no all causes because these issues weren't in the bilateral summit, right? So he obviously knows what happened in the last bilateral summit. It's super important that you're up to date on current events. Nick, for example, on the healthcare topic last year, you had a Google alert, right? And so you want to make sure that you're up to date with current events because things change all the time and you can use that current event knowledge, right? If you didn't know what had happened, or even if there was a bilateral summit between the U.S. and India, you wouldn't have been able to make that argument. So sometimes just being like more informed than your opponent about recent events can also help with your argument, right? Yeah.
One last thing for me. How did we know what argument Nick was answering? I'm sorry, Ben. What did we know about what Ben was answering? Sorry, Ben.
You mentioned the author?
Yeah, he would give like a very short off their argument. He would say the evidence, right? Then he would give the answers. So it is crucial, especially when you are answering arguments, that you are letting the judge know which argument you are responding to.
Right, I thought, the line-by-line debating was really, really good. I knew exactly where he was, and then I could flow it next to it. Okay, he's talking about the internal link to Indo-Pak War, he's answering telemeeting, and I can flow it next to it, right? Did he drop anything in the speech? No. Yeah, I didn't think so, right? I thought he answered, like, every argument, right? One other thing is, there's something else I was going to point out. Oh, the evidence comparison I thought was really good, right? And every time I judge Ben, he's always really good at this. What are some ways that he compared the evidence? Was he just like, this card's old, or what did he say? Yeah.
This card's actually an argument for the app.
Yeah, so he was able to kind of sort of verbally recut their evidence and make an argument about why it goes to the app. That's like really, really good, right? So a lot of times before rounds, sometimes what we'll do is we'll look, if we're neg, we'll look up the team's 1AC, and we'll be like, okay, where does this evidence go neg? Because most of the time, authors who are like relatively intelligent will be like, well, there might be some good things about Trump and there might be some bad things about Trump. It's pretty rare that people are just like, well, maybe Trump's that example, but it's pretty rare that people are just like, X is terrible. They usually say that there's like some middle ground because most things in life are not absolutes. There's like kind of a good middle ground. And I thought it was really smart in a couple places where he explained briefly why their cards went app and was able to sort of recut them essentially to go app. Yeah.
What is the next speech that happens? 2NC. What happens after the 2NC? Cross X, and then we have the 1NR. What do we call the 2NC and the 1NR?
Negative block.
The negative block. What do we know about what Maggie is not going to do? What will Maggie not do in the 2NC? Take all of the arguments, right? She has a really good partner in Jazzy. She wants to make sure that Jazzy has stuff to talk about too. Are there any like burning questions that people have? All right.
Does everyone sort of understand what's going on? Nobody nodded. Let's try that again. Do people sort of understand what's going on? Okay, then better. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to be extending the disad. So all you're going to need is the flow for the disad, and Jazzy will be extending case in the 1NR.
Give it away.
Jazzy's taking the case.
Spoiled.
That's a lot of work. Okay.
I'm forgetting to change the colors.
You must only defend.
I don't like this like light. That's, yeah. Kind of yeah. Well, you can switch thoughts. Okay.
Switch a room.
Oh, this is way better. Which is the worst one?
Well, let me open your good speech. What are you going to do?
What?
I'd open your speech up.
Nah. Okay. Alright, does everyone know what's happening? They have their papers?
Nick might not.
Nick, you good?
Good job.
Henry, you got it together? Henry. Okay.
Because Christian.
What?
No. Okay. The disad outweighs the case. H-1B visas stagnate wages and disincentivize innovation. This stifles economic growth and creates incentives for diversionary war. Trump is uniquely likely to escalate conflict because he's an irrational actor that needs to garner political support. This draws in other powers and goes nuclear fast. They have to respond if we strike first. Every conflict that Henry identified in the 2AC is a conflict that could escalate in only the world of the disad. Economic growth is key to democracy. Decline causes backsliding, turns the app.
Friedman and 5. A rising standard of living shapes the social, political, and moral character of people. Growth fosters dedication to democracy. Alternating eras of growth and stagnation, democratic values have strengthened or weakened accordingly. In America, the quality of our democracy is at risk. Even a long democratic history does not immunize the country from becoming a democracy without Democrats. And econ decline causes Indo-Pak War, turns the AF. Hildebrand and Clausen in 15. Economic downturn in the U.S. leaves India without a strong market for exports or modernization model. Its infrastructure cracks and insurgencies become bloody and widespread. Pakistani groups commit terrorist acts, full-blown conflict erupts in Kashmir. Al-Qaeda increase interreligious conflict. The Taliban resume control in Afghanistan. First, I'll answer the top part of the dissent. Economic collapse is only inevitable in a world where the plan is passed. They say the immigration is key to creating innovation and jobs. I'll answer this more specifically later in the link debate. However, the act doesn't increase startups or innovation because there's no way to be certain that this is what immigrants will do when they come to the U.S. It is likely that they just enter the tech sector and crowd out jobs that exist there. They say that wage growth can't fix the entire economy. However, wage growth is what drives the economy because it drives consumer spending and thus innovation, which they have conceded is the problem with economic growth now. That's one in the RAIM that they did not answer. There's no shortage of skilled workers now. Our evidence indicates that the perception of increased foreign skilled workers stops individuals from studying or looking for jobs in STEM fields. Only the AF reverses this trend. Either way, they don't have an impact to any shortage. I'll answer the impact arguments now. Yes, there's an impact to the dissent. This was explained above. But Trump is very likely to start a nuclear war if the economy sharply declines. Sure, Trump is known for Twitter firestorms now, but can you imagine what he would do in a world where the economy suddenly goes into extreme recession and he loses all support? Trump would have to do something to rally the country, and given that he's erratic and irrational, this would be launching nuclear weapons. That's Foster, which includes data on the likelihood of a rally around the flag effect in a time of economic downturn. Yes, it makes sense. The AF hurts wages in the short term because it is a sudden influx of new skilled workers in the economy, which immediately causes layoffs and wage stagnation that generally happens much faster than the affirmative. Next, let's go to the uniqueness debate. Wages are high now. Tech sector wages are double national wages and key to overall economic growth. It recently expanded by 3% and is a driving force for innovation. That's Grisham. They say that wages are low. Their piece of evidence is terrible. It's one sentence without any warrant for wages being low, and only says that wages are not growing as fast as we'd like in the underlined portion, not that they are stagnating. Also, this evidence is just about wages in general, where our dissent is much more nuanced and concerns the wages of high-skilled workers, which they've posited drive the economy. And we'll read two more pieces of evidence that are way newer than any of their cards. First, wages are increasing now. Schwartz in 6-1. The 92nd consecutive month of job creation, economists expect momentum to continue. Hourly earnings rose 2.7, enough to assuage fears that wages are stagnating. The stock market rallied, unemployment could sink, painted a robust labor market. And the economy is in a sweet spot because of heightened labor market strength. Irwin in 6-1. Healthy words to describe 0.3% rise in earnings. A nice improvement, not sharp. The U.S. economy just keeps humming along. Wage growth strikingly durable and steady expansion. Does anybody have a timer because this one turned off?
Oh, it's hard.
It's okay. Okay, I'm just going to give the speech.
Yeah.
Tech sector wage growth is high. Elias in 125. Despite negatives, the tech sector seemed unperturbed. Despite a lessening of job growth, it's still tremendously high. In 4 years, the Bay Area created 80,000 more tech jobs. Anything over 2% is a good thing. Next, let's go to the link debate. The domestic STEM labor pool in the United States, they said that there are all causes to wage growth. I've explained why wages are high now above. Their piece of evidence is way too old. Our uniqueness cards price this in. They are newer and specific to high-tech wage growth. Next, let's go to the link debate. The domestic STEM labor pool in the United States is bloated and packed to the limit. There are more qualified STEM graduates looking for jobs than there are jobs available now. The plan further increases the pool of skilled workers looking for jobs, but does not increase the demand for those workers. A glut in the labor pool would be disastrous for every reason why the app is potentially good. It would lead to unemployment, lower overall wages, and rampant deflation, a general decline in working conditions, and an overall decline in the future supply of STEM workers. That's Benderly. The link alone means the plan can't solve any of its impacts. A large labor pool now means a tiny labor pool in the future. Future scientists are looking to the size of the labor pool to determine if a STEM career is worth it. A large labor pool discourages them from pursuing that career because they know wages will be lower and opportunities will be fewer. They say that H-1B visas increase wages. However, their evidence doesn't have a single warrant for how it happens. They just assert that this is likely, where ours uses statistics and data. The problem is that their evidence doesn't price in the stagnating demand for jobs competing with the amount of skilled workers in the pool for jobs. You should prefer our evidence that prices this in and has a clear story for a world in which H-1B visas lower wages. They say the benefits of the plan outweigh the links. I already answered this above by explaining the link debate. The link happens way faster than any advantage of the app because the app first requires 110,000 H-1B visa recipients to come to the United States and then somehow sustain U.S. competitiveness and stop democratic backsliding. And the underlying part of this card concludes that there is evidence that companies that hire H-1B recipients pay less. And an influx of workers floods the labor market with a massive labor supply without the demand for more workers. That drives down wages. That's fair and owing. A large influx of workers floods the labor market and drives down wages. H-1B workers are paid lower, 33% less. H-1Bs have an adverse impact on wage levels. If we open up a window for skilled workers, that would suppress wage. And the effect of the plan is quantifiable and massive. Bukhari 17. Without foreign labor, domestic employment would have been between 6 and 10% higher. Influx also held down wages. And the link is faster than the app solvency. That's Saltzman 907. Shortages are due to the inability of firms to induce STEM qualified. There is the impact of perceived career opportunities, likely to affect a student's career choices. Executives calling for visas may be sending signals to students about diminished career opportunities. They conceded the internal link debate. Let's go there next. They didn't read any evidence to answer this or make any analytical arguments. This means that there is a 100% risk that wages are key to the economy and that the decline of wages massively hurts the economy. This is something that you are certain of at the end of the debate more than anything in the app. I'll explain our internal link now. Our RAM evidence indicates that the root cause or that wage decline is too many workers, or it occurs because there are too many workers competing for jobs, and the ability for H-1B workers to work for less. Wages are key to the economy because the economy relies on consumer spending, and when wages are low, consumer spending is drastically affected, which ruins the possibility for economic growth. Wage growth is key to the economy, Duke and 16. Gordon, one of the leading productivity experts, argues that higher wages boost productivity growth, the main reason for slow growth by giving firms a reason to purchase capital. The slowdown presents a direct threat to growth. Productivity is slowed regardless of tax policies. Employers have little reason to invest in new capital and raise productivity when wages are stagnant. Your time is
We'll get you a new timer.
Okay, are you good?
Yeah.
All right, the link debate, what card says that there's a shortage of STEM jobs now?
That was the third part that I read. Let me figure out the author of it. The Saltzman evidence, but the Federally evidence from the 1NC also makes this distinction because it's not so much about a shortage of jobs that it is about the difference between the demand for jobs that exists in a world where the plan passes versus the amount of workers that are put into the economy, which is why I asked Nick those questions in 1NC process.
The Benderly card has 30 words highlighted, and 11 of them
That's
are
like
conjunctions.
way more highlighted than anything that you've
but
read.
11 of them are conjunctions or the word visa. So what part of that makes a claim that the overall STEM market is bloated, that there are a shortage of jobs, and that the plan
Making arguments about how many words are highlighted in a card does not just prove that there are warrants that are highlighted in it. The Benderly evidence still makes this. What more? I just explained that to you earlier.
Okay. Who does Trump strike with a nuke?
Any conflict that you isolated in the last cross-ex could be a conflict that could escalate because the way the diversionary war works is that the president needs to incite a war in order to retain political support. So we agree that there are a bunch of different conflicts that exist now, but we think that the only way that those escalate into the level of nuclear war is in the world where the economy has a short-term decline that Trump needs to rally people around to fix.
Why does that diversionary conflict include a first strike with a nuke rather than just a conventional military
Have you ever seen the things that Trump does or says? It's very
and
likely.
He hasn't launched a nuke.
First of all, you've never made an argument about conventional conflict, so that would be kind of rude to make in the 1AR. But anyway, it's likely that it includes a nuclear weapon because in a world where there's just like a huge recession, the economy just, it's over, it's all over, that the only way to make that, or induce a rallying around the flag effect to the level necessary would be a nuclear conflict, especially when there are different problems like North Korea's nuclear weapons.
Okay, the link debate, the perception card you read, what part of the salesman card makes an argument about future wage decline as a result of that perception? Or is it just about the labor pool?
Well, there are a bunch of levels of the link debate. The Saltzman card is just, so we have the short-term impact of people, like an influx of workers into the market being bad for the economy, but this argument, this evidence is just in a world where you win a high risk of a long-term internal link, that we also impact the economy in a long-term way, because people will not want to apply for STEM qualified or STEM career jobs or go into STEM career paths in college, etc., because they are afraid that there aren't jobs.
So then the pool of STEM workers declines, like there's less supply for them. Why doesn't that increase wages?
Well, the wages are already down because the link is already, like, the H-1B visa's claim was already passed. This is just like worse things that happen.
All right, so this is where we start to see some glazed over faces, right? So I see a lot of you halfway through, you were just staring at Maggie. One, that's because she's awesome and amazing, and two, that's also because you might be a little bit lost, okay? Raise your hand if you are totally lost, not totally, raise your hand if you're a little bit lost right now and you're not 100% sure what's going on, right? So A, you are not alone, all right? And people who didn't raise their hand may still be. This gets difficult because what happens in the negative block is that Maggie has 8 minutes to talk about one argument that they spent maybe 2 minutes on, right? So the debate starts to expand here. If you have no clue what's going on, what is the first important thing you must do? No. Flow. Who said flow? Well done. Why is flowing so important? Yeah, it helps you follow along, right? I'm going to be honest. I don't know everything that Maggie just said. But as I keep writing and as I keep flowing, things start to make a little bit more sense for me, right? Secondly, the nature of debate is that as things, in the middle speeches, things grow, in the later speeches, they're going to tell us what's most important and put the story together, okay? So it is vital that you flow and that you do not stop. Deal? All right, let's talk about some of the arguments.
I want to define a couple of terms that y'all may not be familiar with. Does anyone know what economic stagnation is? Yeah.
It's when because the economy is like a series of crests and troughs. And economic stagnation is when it sort of plateaus, if you look on a graph, and there's no economic growth or no economic decline.
Yeah, that's a pretty good explanation, right? So economic stagnation, when there's little or no economic growth, right? Is that generally good or bad? Bad. Okay, good. Another term that Maggie used a couple times that you may not know is the rally around the flag effect. This is when a president's popularity goes up after they engage in like a short war. So a good example of this is when Bush declared the war on terror, people started to approve of him more, and so he basically, like, the war shortly increased his popularity. Okay? So when she mentions the rally around the flag effect, that's what she's talking about. Are there any other words that y'all want me to define? Those are two that stood out to me. No? Okay. Daddy, all you.
Send out the dog. I'm not reading any new cards.
Hardest one in R.
When your 1 and C cards are so good, you don't need them.
One other quick thing, right? I really liked how at the top of the 2 NCs, Maggie made an argument that the DA outweighs the case, right? In my lab yesterday, we were talking a little bit about this, right? That's a good example of that, and then she kind of explained it, right? So she did kind of a comparison about why the impact of the DISAD was worse than the impact of the other. Where's going to happen first?
All right, so because Brett already kind of gave y'all a preview, and Maggie did as well, of what the 1 in R is going to be. It's going to be all the case sheets of paper. Now, first, I'm going to go to the solvency page. Then, I'm going to go to the competitiveness, leadership, advantage, the first advantage. Okay, first one, all about leadership and competitiveness, hegemony, that one. Then, saving the, I guess, best for last? I don't know if it's the best, but ENDI advantage on the bottom, okay? So solvency, first advantage, second advantage. Time.
I will be very strict. That one's mine, so please do not break that. I get that you can break Pat's timer, but...
All right, does everyone have all the sheets of paper that they need? You have the right color of pen that you're going to flow the next speeches with? The winning color? All right, everyone's ready. The app can't solve for two reasons. One, there is zero guarantee that enough high-skilled workers will apply to the H-1B visa program. The app's solvency is reliant on them proving that hundreds of thousands of immigrant entrepreneurs will migrate to the U.S. And the app has to win that they will go into these specific fields that their evidence cites. The app's plan does not guarantee this. They cannot fiat or mandate that these immigrants will go into STEM fields or universities to work in these high-paying jobs. It's more likely they will work in low-paying jobs in the tech sector and won't be able to stimulate the economy or trade relationships with India, which means the app can't solve their advantages. Next, the visa process has too many hurdles and delays because it takes forever to apply and get a visa. Our Lowell evidence is directly responsive to the app's Campoy card. The app's evidence does not say the plan solves potential hurdles. It just says that applicants pay attention. Their Campoy card is from some random website with zero qualifications, whereas our Lowell evidence is from a director of immigration policy studies at Georgetown, which means because the app can't solve any of those hurdles, it means they can't solve their impacts fast enough. Next, telecommuting solves the need for visas because workers can just stay in their home country while working for a US-based company. This argument is extremely important because the app has to win that these immigrant workers have to be physically in the US to solve their harms, but none of their evidence warrants this. Workers can just stay in their home country while also working for a US company because it's 2018 and we have the internet now, which would also stimulate the economy just as much as the plan. Go to the first advantage. We are going to turn this. Restrictions on H-1Bs are good because they produce net more innovation. Our limit card says that keeping visa limits is good because it forces companies to focus on hiring U.S. workers rather than outsourcing their labor, which means they'll create better recruiting programs and will stimulate the economy. They say our evidence doesn't say American workers can fill the gap. Actually, it does. The card is entirely in the context of American workers being laid off right now due to foreign workers, and the app only makes that infinitely worse. Next, even if the app wins that competitiveness and U.S. superiority are good in the abstract, those powers are ineffective and bad in a world of Trump. Think about this. Both of the app's advantages rely on them wielding U.S. power effectively and responsibly. Do you think that President Cheeto, in the driver's seat of U.S. hegemony, is going to craft effective foreign policy with Russia, China, or with India? No, he has insulted all of our allies. He has no idea what he's doing. He sent airstrikes to Syria. You think he's going to be the one to stop Russia expansion? He is BFFs with Russia. This is a framing issue. The app has zero evidence about Trump, which is why I focused on that in Cross-X. But we have hyper-specific evidence that says Trump wrecks any chance of smart foreign policy and hurts all of our diplomatic relations, which turns both of their advantages. Next, even if you somehow believe the app solves U.S. leadership, they don't have a credible impact scenario. They haven't passed the make sense test. Remember that awkward 1AC Cross-X moment where they couldn't identify who actually starts a war? They just listed off some countries and some shout out to random terrorist organizations. That does not cut the mustard because they haven't identified the actual relationship between tech innovation and who starts a war. What is the motivation for China to start a war with the U.S.? I don't know because they haven't explained anything. Go to the second advantage. They have played themselves. If democracy is so lit that it prevents wars, it should be strong enough to prevent an Indo-Pak war since they are both democracies. They say that we need to expand democracy. They don't expand democracy. They have no evidence in the second advantage. I dare them to find it that says that they increase democracy. They only say that it's good.
Even if it's good, it doesn't solve war. The U.S. is a democracy, and we've been at war for the past 190 years. It clearly isn't that effective, which is warranted by our attack card. This also means that U.S. relations won't solve anything. There are so many alt causes. I'm going to reread their route and affirmative evidence from their 1AC because it takes out their own internal link. In the tiny 8-point font section of their card, it lists out a bunch of things and recommendations that the U.S. has to do with India, and guess what? The plan does none of them. It says we have to make infrastructure a key shared area of focus. We have to take concrete actions to develop clean energy solutions, build our blue economies, expand our India Science Technology Endowment Fund, continue the PACE Clean Energy Pact thing. We have to become a member of the ISA. Do you remember those things in the plan text? No, which means they have read alt causes against themselves. Next, India won't start a war that they know they can't win because that's not how nuclear deterrence works. Our Montgomery evidence says they won't start a war because it would literally end their existence and they have no motivation.
Good. Okay, do you want to start or start? Okay, so I want to point out a couple things Jazzy did here I thought were really good. What did she do with the Vermont evidence? Yeah. Okay, right, so she made a pretty good solvency deficit argument about how in order to solve the plan would have to do 5 other things, right? I didn't list them all here, but she's like, Vermont's the plans to do other stuff. They don't do any of that, which kills their solvency. I thought that was a really smart argument. What is the idea of nuclear deterrence? Can someone explain that to me? Or let's start here. What is mutually assured destruction? Yeah.
Pretty much the theory that if any country with nuclear weapons attacks another country that has nuclear weapons, they will launch nukes in return, and then pretty much in the end, everyone would end up dying. There's no real winner.
Yeah, exactly right? So there's this theory that she didn't name, but she's kind of alluding to mutually assured destruction, right? Where if you send nuclear weapons to another country and they're going to retaliate with their own nukes, guess what happens to both countries? Yeah, they're both dead. So she made a good argument about that, right? I also really liked how she kind of picked and chose what arguments to go for, especially in the competitiveness advantages, right? She kind of collapsed down the debate to a couple key arguments. I think the Trump argument's pretty good, right? So she's like, even if these advantages are good in the abstract, Trump is crazy, and so it's not going to happen, right? Another thing that she did is she labeled something a framing issue that they have no Trump-specific evidence. What does it mean if you label something like a framing issue? Anyone know? Or what does she mean by that? Yeah.
So I think that a framing issue is an issue that's kind of outside. It's a side issue.
Okay.
It's not.
Do you
It's
want to
not
explain
really
that
part
a little
of.
bit?
Yeah, it's not really part of the immigration stuff, but it's just a side effect of it.
Okay. Yeah, I think I would disagree a little bit with that, right? So she's like, this is the way that you should frame the debate. This is the way that you should look at the debate, right? That they have no Trump-specific evidence, and so it's sort of a way to be this is the lens through which you should view the debate. Does that make sense? Okay. At the top, she made a turn that restrictions are good because they promote more innovation. This is an extension of a 1NC argument. What is a turn? Yeah.
Saying that your argument is ours now.
Yeah, can you explain that a little bit?
Well, saying that in this example, the wages DA causes all of the after impacts, thus by solving for wages, we solve for their impacts.
Okay, yeah, let me expand that a little bit, right? So we have 2 major types of turns. My lab talked about this a little bit yesterday, link turns and impact turns, right? So an impact turn would be if I said hegemony is good, what would the impact turn be? Hegemony is bad, right? That's an impact turn.